Nice fish. Hi guys, Zeno Hromin here with another edition of Fishing with Lures. I've been thinking about today, about this video, and sitting down and talking about what I perceive to be the most important part of surf fishing. By far, the number one, okay? And I'll let you think about what I'm gonna say for a second or so until I get to it. And I said to myself, man, there's no way that I could do this in one video. There's no way that no one can do this in series of videos, or maybe you could, I guess, or the books should just be written about it. My point is, when we talk about what's important in surf fishing, we tend to put a lot of stock into what color did you get it on, what were they hitting last night, what size were the fish, what were they feeding on, what was the tide, what was the moon, who made your bag? Did you swim to the rock? What kind of rod did you use? Did you have a Van Stol? Did you have a Z-Bass? Did you have a pen? Did it take on water? All those things that we talk about, and there's more, you know, from clips to line to, you know, how did you get the cast out? What kind of line did you use? Did you use a thinner line? Did you manage to make the longer cast? Did you use a clip? Did you use a leader with a leader shot? I mean, it's a million freaking things, but it all comes down to a thing that's least discussed, which is structure. Beach structure to me is number one, not even close to any of those things that I mentioned when it comes to importance of catching fish. And that's why I'm not going to stress myself of having these bullet points here where I'm going to go over and make sure I hit them all. Whatever pops in my head, it pops in my head. But I will break this down in multiple videos because I can see it already in my head that I can go on for an hour, and we're not even going to be close to covering everything. And we're never going to cover everything because I tell you what, like most of you, I don't fish everything. I do have a general knowledge of a lot of things, but honest to God, I don't fish a lot of things, a lot of places, a lot of structures, a lot of, you know, I'm not a big calm water back bay guy. I'm just not. I like big plugs. I like rough water. I like ocean surf. That's what I like. Now, in the spring, will you find me in the back bays with a lighter rod? Yes. But as soon as the fish show up on a south shore, and even bluefish, I'll leave the bass and go chase bluefish because that's just where I like to fish. So my point is, none of us is great at everything. Okay, so I'm definitely. I'll tell you right now, I'm nowhere near that. Actually, I'm nowhere near great of just about anything. I always felt that I caught a lot of fish via perseverance, okay? When everybody else was going home, when everybody else after 2 nights were tired, where, you know, I used to get up at 2 a.m., okay? Run down to Jones Beach. This is when weak fish was good. Run down to Jones Beach. From 3 o'clock to 4:30, I'd fish. I timed it perfectly where I could walk off the jetty, get in my car, get back to the railroad station and take the 5:31, which is my standard train to work, and go to work. And then I would repeat this as long as I could catch the tide. I mean, that's insanity. That's not, you know, your body can only take so much of this. But my point is, this didn't happen because I was brilliant. This happened because I knew there were fish there, and this was the only tide that I could work. And most people will be like, oh, well, I'm not doing that because I'm going to get fired. And I did it. So my point is, I caught a lot of my fish through perseverance, not necessarily because, you know, of my brilliance. Getting back to the structure. They said that 90% of the world's fish, or something like that, is within 10% of within shore. So inshore is 90% of the fish is within 10% of the shoreline, you know, close to the shore. I would argue, and obviously this is not a scientific fact, but in my opinion, or my mind, 90% of the fish, or 95% of the fish will be found within 10% of the structure within inshore. And I'm not talking about boat guys. I'm not interested in what they do. I'm not interested about the wrecks or reef or whatever they fish. I could care less, okay? I mean, I like boat fishing. There's nothing wrong with it, but surf fishing is my love, so it's a whole different, I have a whole different level of understanding and obsession over it. So what do I mean? Okay, so let's just say that I feel that 90% of the fish are, let's just say if I fish Long Island, right? 90% of the fish will be within some structure. They will be either close to the inlet or on the sandbar which touches the shore, which is irregular to the rest of the sandbars, or at the jetties at Long Beach, or at the inlet at Mauritius, or at the point of Montauk. But they're not going to be, where they're not going to be? They're not going to be at Gilgal unless you are in a migration, okay? They're not going to be, I don't know, fins, okay? Now, having said this, you're going to be like, well, I catch fish at fins all the time, all year round. Yeah, you do. I'm sure you do. And I'm sure you very rarely get into the blitzes on the wide open beaches where you're picking up fish all alone. Most of those fish are staged in the inlets because that's where the bait is. My point is, nothing is absolute, okay? There is no absolute ways of catching fish or finding fish. But we know over the years, you know, by watching, by observing, by reading, by talking, that most of the fish will be staged in a certain spots and not spread out. If you go, and I'm going to say this because a lot of guys, let's say, fish Montauk, right? Or they go make a trip to Montauk, and you go to Montauk in the middle of fall when the fishing was good. And 99% of the guys will be from, let's just say, you know, Falls Bar, North Bar, then there will be a void of people, and then the people will be at Jones Reef, and then they'll be void in the weed bowl, and then people will be at the bluffs, and then they'll be at the lighthouse. And then you look for miles down from North Bar to Chagrin, there's no one there. Now, if you think that most of these guys would not rather go at stepping stones where there's no one to be alone instead of fishing shoulders to shoulder, you're crazy. And if you think that no one has tried to do it, you're crazy too. They have. The thing is, the fish are not there. They are here, and that's why the guys are here. Okay, but you got to think about this in terms of the way you see people, okay? If you see people crowded in one spot, 99% chance is that the fish are also crowded in that spot, meaning that the bait is crowded in that spot. So everything around that stuff is not as productive. So you can fight everybody and think that you're smarter than everybody else and walk away, and you don't want to be, you know, fishing in crowds, which is fine. Or you can find another better time or hours where they can't fish, so you can have a little more, space to yourself. But you can't argue with the fact that most of the fish will be found in specific areas. And this is what I mean when I say the structure, okay? And the structure can be anywhere from an inlet, a drainage channel, an inlet between the two islands in the back bay, a marsh drop-off, an island in the sea, okay? Let's just say a point sticking out into the water, a cut in a sandbar. Anything that's irregular, it's something that you should concentrate most of your efforts. Now, if you like chunking and you like to be away from the pluggers and you want to get in some space, you're probably not going to be most of the time in these places because you're going to get probably crowded over by guys fishing plugs most of the time. Let's say Montauk Lighthouse being one of the spots, inlets being another spot, you know, places like that. But if you are a lure fisherman, you will find or you will seek these particular spots. They do a bunch of things for a particular lure fisherman that you can't replicate in the areas where don't have the structure. First of all, they create the areas of unstable water. And this is basically what you're looking for when you're surf fishing, okay? You're looking for anything irregular. There is 100 and something miles of beach. Let's just say I'm going to say New York because I fished New York, so I'm kind of more familiar with it, but you can apply this to where you fish. There's 120 miles, I believe, from Brooklyn to Montauk Point of sand, okay? I'm going to say maybe a mile or two out of that is really productive. The other 118 miles, there's probably no fish in it. A bunch of skates and sand sharks and sea robins. So does that make sense in a way that you should now just go to the beach and says, well, the fish are on Jones Beach and you just go and walk? No, you find the structure. So you will fish, let's just say, a jetty, or you will fish an inlet, or you will fish the sandbar. And then, so if you find that the fish is good, let's just say, because somehow you got to figure this out. Either someone's got to tell you, or you got to figure out on your own, which is fine. Either way, there's no shame in either. There's no shame if somebody call you up and say, listen, we had fish at the Smiths Point Beach, or at Rhode Island at the Narragansett, or whatever it is. So my point is, when you get there, like, it's very rare that someone's going to call you and says, look, I had a fish last night. It was 35 steps from the entrance that make 2 lefts and 2 rights and cast, and you're right there, right by the rock I painted a little X for you so you don't get lost. That doesn't work like that, okay? For the most part, the fishing's not that easy, okay? Whoever's gonna give you information is gonna give you general information. My point is, how do you then process that information where you can go and try to give yourself the best chance for success, okay? What you now have to find within the structure, within the beach, is the most irregular part of that beach. Now, again, we are making this general observation, so because the way I'm laying this out is that in a way that you can apply this to wherever you are. I'm not trying to go into specific places which might be good or bad. For example, we all know that inlets are best fish on the outgoing, okay? I fish most of my spots on incoming. Why? Because my spots are more productive on incoming because of the way the holes next to the jetties are laid out on the bottom, and the way the current goes over them, they're more productive on the incoming. Okay, and there's rocks underneath the water, which water floats over and creates this unstable structure. My point is, it's not a general sense. That particular spots work for me on a quote-unquote wrong current, or wrong tide, or whatever you want to call it. So my point is, these talks are on a general observation, so you can apply this. You can say to yourself, all right, I'm new at this. I'm going to go to the beach. What am I looking for? All right, if you only find one thing, and that is the most unstable water on that beach, you're probably going to do better than anywhere else on that beach. That's my point. And the whole point of this is to find the best chance of success. As I explained it before, 120 miles of beach and 2 miles being productive. Well, guess what? Your chances of being productive are not very good. So whatever you can learn in order to make you more productive, it's going to make the sport more enjoyable, because it is a difficult sport to consistently be successful, especially now when the fisheries are kind of in flux. 2019, the fishing's not the greatest. So how do we approach the structure? So in my way of thinking, this really depends on how and where you fish. I'm looking at areas like back bays being one specific type of structure, the ocean front being another, and then meaning the wide open beaches. So the back bay and wide open beaches being 2 structures, and then the inlets being a 3rd one. And inlets, I would put inlets that are the ocean inlets, and also the little inlets like bridges. I consider bridges inlets. They're not inlets, obviously, but they're usually built between 2 very narrow points of land, and the current there is so great that usually you can replicate the same thing that you do at the inlet. It's kind of a similar structure. That's why, I call it an inlet. So I'm going to try to break this down in 3 different location-specific talks where I can give you my thoughts of how to fish, what lures to use, when is the best time. For today, we'll just kind of generalize the structure, okay? So let me just